Kyle Shanahan chewed out Brock Purdy for a solid 5 minutes at his locker after the 49ers lost to the Chiefs on Sunday. Was Kyle Shanahan throwing Brock Purdy under the bus? We'll discuss that and much more next on Cohn and Hensley. Welcome to Cohn and Hensley. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Ryan G. Hensley. This is presented by the Sleeper app. The Niners just lost a heartbreaker to the Chiefs. They're never going to beat the Chiefs. It's never going to happen. Kyle Shanahan, after the game, asked about why they lost, pointed to the turnovers, and then walked right into the locker room while the media was there and went to Brock Purdy's locker while he was sitting facing his locker. Then Brock Purdy stood up and listened while standing and nodding and didn't talk. Kyle talked a lot, used his hands a lot, seemed frustrated. Then they embraced and walked away. I asked Brock, what was that? And he said they were just talking about some moments in the game. How do you interpret that scene?
I mean, let's ask the question, why? Right? Was he trying to educate Brock Purdy? Because if he's trying to educate and coach Brock Purdy, you can do that privately. You can do that the next day in the film room. So why? That's not why, because if that's what he wanted to do, he could have done it that way. The question is, why would you put that display in front of his teammates, in front of the media, and is to shift accountability on to Brock Purdy and not yourself? And yes, he absolutely threw him under the bus with that. As a coach myself for 10 years, I would never have done that. If I have an issue with players, like if I want to address the team as a group, I'll do it with all of them there. If I want to address a player, I pull them to the side and talk to them individually, not in front of their teammates, and damn sure not in front of the media. So, yeah, he absolutely threw him under the bus, and this is another symptom of what we've been talking about for years with Kyle Shanahan, which is the lack of accountability. He wants to shift the blame to Brock. So, yes.
Yeah, and I think, he did this a couple of weeks ago to Brandon Aiyuk with the shorts incident. He did it in front of the media, had this whole scene, gave us something to talk about. It went viral. Like, thank goodness for Brock, we weren't allowed to film this. Otherwise, there'd be millions of views on this right now. And they didn't need it. Kyle didn't need it. He got the point across. Like, everyone, a lot of the local media came to that game yesterday ready to crown the Niners. The things they were going to say if the Niners won the game. Hey, they might win the Super Bowl this year, that kind of stuff. But then they lose and no one really knows what to say, because this is the game you got to come down hard on Kyle Shanahan. He just got out coached by Andy Reid again. And Kyle knows that. And he's a smart guy and he's good at keeping his job. So he gives all the media a scene. Watch me talk to Brock. And you could interpret it, like if you're Lombardi, oh, that's Kyle being a good coach and they love each other and everything's hunky-dory. Or if you're Tim Kawakami, you can take that and spin it as Brock lost the game. If you read Kawakami's article, it's Brock lost the game. And that's exactly what Kyle Shanahan wanted people to think. Brock lost the game. Well, to me, it's a lot more complicated than that.
It is more complicated than that. Now, there's a lot of blame to go to Brock Purdy. Brock did, in fact, lose this game, right? But a lot of them did. But it's also on Kyle. It's not just on Brock Purdy. And that's the thing that's frustrating to me. Like, hold him accountable to the press, right? The press asks you questions about Brock Purdy and where he made mistakes and what he did wrong. Tell him the truth. That's fine. That's great. As long as you're doing that about yourself as well. If you're just doing it about Brock, your team is going to lose trust for you. They're going to lose respect for you. It's not cool. That's not good leadership. And Kyle he's not going to, but he has to learn to be accountable for himself as well. He's not going to. We know that by now, but it's one of the things that frustrates me with that dude.
Also, it's so easy to go to the 24-year-old quarterback who hasn't gotten paid and is like a bit of a people pleaser and is never going to talk back to you. Like, why don't you go over to Trent Williams' locker and give him a 5-minute lecture about getting ejected? You won't do that though, because you're scared of Trent. You wouldn't say a word to Trent about getting ejected and throwing a punch. You'll talk to Brock though.
Yeah,
it's kind of whack, kind of weak, and whack.
Weak and whack, whack and weak. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so it was intentional. It's the second time he's done it. It's a bad look. And I feel for Brock. But at the same time, Brock's not blameless here. I mean, no. Brock threw 3 picks. Let's talk about Brock Purdy for a second. Is Brock Purdy, well, during the game, you watched on TV. I was at the stadium. I couldn't hear Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady as an analyst. He's pretty honest.
Yeah.
And from what I understood, he kept using a particular word when describing things Brock Purdy did. Throws, decisions, average. Average throw from Brock Purdy. Mm-hmm. Is Brock Purdy average? And I asked that question last 12 games for Brock, going back to the Ravens. That's like pretty much the calendar year 2024. Last 12 games, he's 6-6 with a quarterback rating of 87, 14 touchdowns, 12 picks. Last 12 games. Yeah. Is he mid?
Well, let's talk more. So before Monday Night Football, obviously that game has to be played today. He's ranked 22nd in completion percentage at 63.9. He's tied for the fourth most interceptions in the NFL with 7. He's tied for 11 touchdowns with Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. He's 12th in QBR and 17th in rating. Look, it's hard not to like Brock as the person because of who he is. It's an underdog story that you want to get behind and support and hope ends well. But from a number standpoint and from a film standpoint, when you're watching him, yeah, he's playing mid right now. He was good for this system. The system was good for him, but defenses have figured out how to stop this system. And now Brock Purdy's being challenged to step up and be more than just a system dude. And he's being exposed a little bit. That's the truth, man. I hate to, I like to pull my punches on Brock because I like the person, I like the kid. But from a quarterback standpoint, absolutely. He's not playing well at all. And I think we're kind of seeing who Brock Purdy is when things are going well. Look, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy are both front runners. And I mean that from a game standpoint. When the game's going well, the run game's working, and you're up, and you're going against soft zone coverages, they can have success. But when the game's tied or they're behind and you're in known passing situations and you have to have a drop back passing game, the offense and Brock Purdy are not good. That's just the facts.
Yeah, what's tough for me with Brock is like separating him from Kyle Shanahan's problems. Like how much of Brock Purdy's malaise or whatever you want to call it is a direct result of Kyle Shanahan's system getting figured out. And here's what I want to look at. Like, well, I'll get to that in a second, but let's compare him to a couple of quarterbacks. First, we'll compare him to Jimmy G. Jimmy G won a lot with this team. Jimmy G put up good numbers with this team. Is Brock Purdy a better story than Jimmy G? Yeah, absolutely. Is Brock Purdy a harder worker than Jimmy G? No question. Is Brock Purdy a better athlete than Jimmy G? Yes. Is Brock Purdy a better passer than Jimmy G?
Mentally, yes. Physically, no. Mentally, yes.
I don't know about that. He doesn't have the arm to really challenge man-to-man coverage. He didn't have the arm to get drafted before the 7th round. Jimmy had the arm to get drafted in round 2. I think there's just more arm talent with Jimmy. And it seemed like with Jimmy, he would make a lot of boneheaded mistakes, but they wouldn't spiral on him. Like he would find a way to not care. He'd laugh it off on the sideline with that smile and then come back and do something strangely good. Whereas Brock Purdy, when it's bad, it goes bad.
Jimmy could, if the first read was open, Jimmy was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I say that as a guy who does not like Jimmy Garoppolo. But if there's a short first look open, Jimmy was hella good. Got the ball out quick. Beautiful pass. And as far as throwing deep, Jimmy could actually throw deep physically. Mentally is where Jimmy was gun shy to pull the trigger. He is more talented from an arm standpoint. Mentally, I still like Brock over Jimmy. But from a talent physically standpoint, no, Jimmy's definitely the superior passer.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that Brock is like the next Jimmy in the sense that like Jimmy was a fraud and Jimmy's a backup now. Although he was 3-3 with the Raiders, makes you wonder. But Jimmy's a backup now, and it's sort of an example of a quarterback that Kyle and the Niners propped up. But this scheme and this system is pervasive. It's widespread across the league, and the Rams run a very similar version of it. McVay's a similar coach, and he's won a Super Bowl, but he had Jared Goff. Jared Goff was very successful early on with Sean McVay. Teams kind of caught up, and then Goff went through a couple of years where he was mid. And you thought, man, like if you're mid with Sean McVay, something's wrong with you. And they got rid of him and brought in Matthew Stafford, who's a great quarterback. But then Goff goes to Detroit, and all of a sudden, he's not mid anymore. He's a Pro Bowl. He's playing the best of his career. And it's like, well, maybe this Ben Johnson guy's better than McVay, or maybe Jared Goff just needed a new coach. Like, before we label Brock Purdy as mid, I kind of would like to see him with a different coach, because he's done some good stuff. And I know his arm is limited, but so is Goff's to an extent. Like, Goff can't move. I feel like with a great coach, Brock Purdy's more than good enough. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he's better than average. You gave him Ben Johnson. You put him on the lines right now. I think he'd be balling.
Goff can make all the throws. Brock
True. He's got a stronger arm than Purdy. I'm not trying to equate them. That's true.
Yeah, but I agree. Like, at this moment, the way I feel right now, I'm cool on Kyle Shanahan, and I want to see Brock under a different coach. Like, I'm not done with Brock Purdy as far as like get him off my team, but that's how I feel right now about Kyle. And I've never said that before until yesterday, and we're going to talk about that later. But with Brock, I do want to see him with another coach and see what he looks like. And Ben Johnson is the hottest ticket right now as far as coaches are concerned. I would love to see Brock with a good offensive play caller. It's crazy to say that, because that's what Kyle's known for. He's called the genius, but he's just not. There's no creativity from him. Ben Johnson is. If Kyle's a genius, what's Andy Reid? What's Ben Johnson? Because they're much more successful offensively than Kyle has been. So to me, I'm lower on Kyle than I am on Brock Purdy. Now, Brock Purdy, if you look at him, we all wanted to ask the question, Grant. Like, the question was coming into the season before we pay him, what does he look like if you take some of these weapons away? Well, we're seeing it. He's trending 22 touchdowns and 17 interceptions on the season. That doesn't include his fumbles. He's pretty much 1-to-1 turnover to touchdown ratio, and that's not good.
And he's trending for like 7 or 8 wins.
It's not good. It's not good, man. And so to ask the question is he mid? He's playing like it right now. There's no other way to put it. He is.
He is. And again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, like, man, this is more of a function of Kyle. Like, anytime Kyle goes up against a certain, like, a good defense, he falls apart. But anytime Brock Purdy goes up against a good defense, he's terrible. Like, he's good against bad teams, but when he goes up against Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Minnesota, I mean, it's all bad. It's a disaster. That's scary. They're 0-5 when he throws 2 picks in a game, man. If he was really good, he'd be able to, like, win some of those games. Like, Patrick Mahomes could throw 2 picks in a game and win. I'm sure he does it all the time. But Purdy can't. What's that about?
Well, what it's about really is, like, you could throw out stats, and you and I are both, neither one of us are big on, like, stats. We're not like stats are everything, right? But here's what matters: the difference between Kyle Shanahan, or excuse me, Patrick Mahomes and a Brock Purdy is, in those key moments, Patrick Mahomes steps up and he has it. Brock Purdy has yet to show us that he's that guy. In the Super Bowl, he didn't lose the Super Bowl, but he had opportunities to win the Super Bowl, and he didn't take advantage of those opportunities. So Brock Purdy has yet to show us that he has it. And until we see that, he's never going to be on that level. So despite what statistics people want to throw out to justify and say he's playing better than Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes is finding ways to win games. Brock Purdy is not.
I just think it was interesting that it was just last week Purdy beat Seattle in Seattle, and people were talking about he was the top graded quarterback in PFF, and he's better than Patrick Mahomes, and he's worth $60 million a year. Like, I don't think people feel that way anymore. I don't think we have to say it. I mean, this guy cost himself a lot of money yesterday.
Yeah, and season's still relatively young. Maybe he can come back, but what he's got to do is, when he's facing teams that disguise their coverages and disguise their blitz, he's got to show that he can win those games. And so far, when he faces defenses like that mix it up, disguise their blitz, mix up their coverages, go to man, like, he's got to show that he can beat those teams, and he hasn't shown that yet. The closest thing he's done beating the Seahawks, Mike McDonald, with a ton of missing players. It's not like Mike McDonald had the Ravens defense to throw at Brock Purdy. We saw what Mike McDonald did with the Ravens players. The Seahawks are not a good team, and that's what's going to happen against this Cowboys team this coming week. I don't know if that's on the agenda, but I expect the 49ers to beat the Cowboys, and I expect Brock Purdy's going to have a good game against the Cowboys, and all the hype's going to come back, and then they're going to go play a team with a good defense again, and the exposure is going to come again. And that's my worry with Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan.
All right. Well, you said it earlier that you're kind of over Kyle Shanahan. You're not the decision. I mean, we're just quality control. We're just trying to help. Do you think Kyle Shanahan is coaching for his job this season? Year 8, they're 3-4. Is there an outcome, a world, something he could do, something he could fail to do that would leave the Yorks with no choice but to go try to get Ben Johnson?
They would be smart to do so, I feel like, at this point. He is coaching for his job. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I think even Jed York would have to fire him at that point. Like, that's the thing. Jed York likes Kyle Shanahan, the person, and he's been getting used to being mediocre and or relevant is probably the better word. He's accepted relevancy. Like, let's get to the playoffs and I'm good. I'm making money. We're fine. If he doesn't make the playoffs, even in Jed York, who has become accustomed to being relevant, now you're not relevant anymore. And you just dropped a whole lot of money on a bunch of players. You're spending a lot of cash. And if you can't make the playoffs after spending this much money, you have to move on. So Kyle Shanahan needs to make the playoffs at minimum. And for me personally, if you don't show me something against one of these really good teams in the playoffs, I'm still firing you. I'm still getting Ben Johnson, because Ben Johnson is going to be hired by another team somewhere this year, this coming off season. He probably should have done it last season, but he's for sure going to happen this season. And you might miss out on that opportunity to get an actual creative offensive play caller. So I think absolutely he's playing for his job.
I think he is too. I mean, I feel like when people say that this isn't realistic, it's because they always say, like, well, it would be such an unpopular move with the fan base and Kyle Shanahan would get scooped up so quickly. But if he misses the playoffs this year, I don't know how unpopular of a move it would be to move on from him. If they were to get Ben Johnson, I think Niner fans would be really excited. And again, guys, if you don't know who Ben Johnson is, he has a real generic name. He's been the general manager. The offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions for the last few years. He doesn't come from a particular coaching tree that's famous, and he doesn't have a famous last name, but he's really creative. I'm not saying he's Andy Reid, but look what he's done with the Lions. Look at how many points they scored against the Vikings, and then compare that to how many points the Niners have scored against the Vikings the last 2 years. I mean, he's doing good stuff.
Here's the ultimate point, man. Like, Kyle Shanahan is 0-5 against Andy Reid, regardless of who his quarterback is. He cannot beat Andy Reid. And if you can't beat Andy Reid, you're not going to win a Super Bowl, most likely, unless you get lucky and they get knocked off and you play an inferior team. But when you get to the playoffs, you're playing the best of the best, these good defensive teams, and Kyle is not good against them. So if you can't beat the Andy Reids, if you're 0-5 against those guys, then what's the point? Are we just accepting we might get second place this year? Is that what we're willing to accept as a fan base? If you fire Kyle Shanahan, he will get hired somewhere else. Who gives a damn? I don't. And you know what? We might hire Ben Johnson, and he might be the next Jim Tom Sula. Guess what? Then you fire his ass too, and you keep looking for the guy that can win the ring for you.
That's a great point. Like, you can't beat Andy Reid, then you can't be the coach of the 49ers, because that's the only team they haven't taken down. Simple as that. And what's crazy is, like, go back to 2016 when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, had that great offense. They faced the Chiefs. The Chiefs quarterback was Alex Smith, and the Chiefs won. Yeah. They freaking won. So, yeah, it's like, if you to use like a basketball analogy, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are the Bulls. They're Michael Jordan, they're Phil Jackson. And if you're going to win a championship, you're probably going to have to knock them off. Yeah. And if your coach has proven over almost 10 years that he can't beat that particular opponent, then you're wasting your time with that guy. You gotta try to find someone else. You have to, or you gotta hope Patrick Mahomes goes plays baseball for a year. Right. Right. His dad was a baseball player. Patrick Mahomes the first. Talk him into it. Maybe he can play minor leagues for the White Sox like Jordan did for a season. Like, I mean, that's the reality. And it's not just the Chiefs, though. It's the Ravens. It's Flores, right? Kyle can't beat these teams. His offense is figured out by these particular defensive coordinators. And I'm going to ask the fan base. A lot of the people in the fan base, I'm conducting a poll. I think like 60% don't believe he can get a Lombardi anymore. But if you're one of these 40% that thinks he can, my question is why? He's 0-5 against Andy Reid. He's 0-2 against Flores as a defensive coordinator. What makes you think
that he can win a Super Bowl. I'm genuinely curious. I think he's shown us who he is at this point, and he just doesn't have the ability to do it.
Kev F says, will Jed/Shanahan win a ring before Mark and Brady?
Mark and Brady.
The Raiders.
I say the Niners do with a different coach at some point in the future before Brady does ever with the Raiders.
Jordan Pena says Brock not worth 60 M's. Ethan M says this game really exposed how inept his coaching is. Cooley says, have you ever seen Kyle Shanahan walk onto the field for an injured player to check on them? Also, been saying off seasons are pointless as long as Kyle Shanahan's coaching. No, I've never seen him do that.
No.
Zara says replace Kyle with Spags.
Well, I love that. I just don't like defensive head coaches because then you got to switch your offense whenever your coordinator gets hired out or fired.
I agree. Ethan M says, from what I see, Brock is good, not perfect, and Kyle doesn't help him out with the pass scheme on offense. Mahomes wasn't good, but he had Reed to support him. I agree with every word.
Yeah. I mean, nothing to disagree on there, Ethan.
Although I do want to know, like, how good is Brock really? We'll have to see, and I'd like to see him with another coach. OB149 says, is Kyle Shanahan for NFC titles or championship games and Super Bowl success a valid reason to not put him on the hot seat? People like Kruger use this, but if that's his ceiling, then why not make a change? You're right. Super Bowl success. I would argue he hasn't had Super Bowl success.
None. He gets there. Yeah, I'm here's where I'm at, Grant. Like, when's the trade deadline? November 8th or something
5th.
like that? 5th. How many games they got before that? They got one more and then the bye week. So they only got one more game against the Cowboys. If you don't beat the Cowboys, here's where I'm at. If you don't beat the Cowboys, sell everything. Get rid of these expensive vets. Plan on replacing Kyle Shanahan with Ben Johnson. Give Brock Purdy another year under Ben Johnson. Draft a quarterback. That's where I'm at with this team. I just don't believe, as is with this team, the way they are right now, that they're going to win a Super Bowl. So don't waste my time.
Don't waste my time. I like that. Michael Silver says, if Kyle were to get fired, wouldn't John Lynch go too? If they're kind of a package deal, no. I mean, the last 7 first-round picks, woof. No, I wouldn't say get rid of John Lynch too. I think there are certain things that I like the scouting department. I think John Lynch represents the organization well. They just had a good draft. I would say no, not John Lynch, go. This is Kyle.
Like John Lynch. I like John Lynch. And we all know that Kyle Shanahan makes these final decisions in the draft anyways.
Yeah. HR says Niners will exit Banana Hand era with 0 rings and $500 million of overpaid players on payroll. They are the Cowboys West. Ooh, that was just a gut punch because it was true. All day, every day. Kim says some people say Brock is elite. If that's the case, then Goff must be a Hall of Famer. Helperman 123 says Super Bowl lost still stings. No playoff, no Kyle. Ethan M says, you think Purdy's becoming frustrated with Kyle? Yeah, I wonder. Like, let's go back to that scene at the locker. We both agree Kyle was out of line to do it. First question, what do you think Kyle said to him as a former coach yourself? And second question, how do you think Brock feels about it?
Well, he's probably saying, there's teammates around. He's just probably coming on him on the interception. But we also need to point out a couple of things with Brock, too. It wasn't just the interceptions. It's the underthrowing George Kittle. It's the underthrowing Jacob Cowing. Both of those could have been touchdowns, would have made the difference in this game. I think that needs to be pointed out as well. He underthrew both of them, and both of them would have been touchdowns had he led him properly. It's throwing the ball off the back of Dominic Pooney's helmet.
So we agree it was Kyle probably talking through his bad plays and Brock standing there and realizing he's doing this in front of the media. Look, if I were Brock, I would not like Kyle as much after. It's like, dude, why did you show me up like that? You could have texted me. You could have taken me around the corner. Why'd you do that to me? I thought you were on my side. Andy Reid is on Patrick Mahomes' side. Patrick Mahomes never has to worry or wonder if Andy Reid has an ulterior motive. But now Brock does, just like Jimmy eventually had to wonder. And Trey had to wonder.
Jimmy got
and
to
Robert Griffin had to wonder.
Jimmy got to a point where he did not respect Kyle Shanahan. And, I was not a big fan of Jimmy's leadership or his character, to be honest. So I always kind of blame that on Jimmy. But now when you see things like this to Brock Purdy, who is the ideal leader that you want in your locker, he may not be the best quarterback, but he says all the right things, does all the right things, takes accountability for himself. He's a young dude. He's doing the best he can. I thought it was interesting in the press conference, they were asked about something. And one of the things he says is, I'm just going to, do the best with the plays that Kyle calls. It was after he got chewed out. I don't know if you noticed that. And Brock wasn't trying to sell out Kyle or anything like that, but that was a key thing he said to me. I'm just trying to do the best with the plays, Kyle calls. I thought that was very interesting. So to answer your question, human nature, you get chewed out in front of a group and they put all the blame on you. When you're willing to put the blame on yourself anyways, it's unnecessary. And I think, yes, there's resentment builds up when you do things like that, 100%.
I dare to say the Cowboys will win a Super Bowl before us as Jorgen 1990. Yikes. I don't think the Cowboys are going to win one anytime soon. Cyber says Kyle is failing to evolve and innovate as a coach with his strategy and knew exactly what his strategy would be. Andy knew exactly what his strategy would be. If they lose versus the Cowboys, buy Kyle.
Agreed.
Whew. They could get Robert Saleh. He's not doing anything. Runa Pereira says death taxes and the Niners losing to the Chiefs. Okay. Got another question for you. Is the Super Bowl window closed? Man, Nick Bosa's face, his attitude after the game, he seemed pretty dejected. Is this a team that knows they're cooked, in your opinion?
If you're a player on the 49ers and you've gone against the Chiefs 5 times and you've lost all 5, what belief do you have in your coach? You don't have any belief in your coach that he can do it. You've seen the results 5 times. 5 times. So no, I mean, of course he feels dejected. Of course, I don't think these guys, I think they're losing a lot of belief. Is the Super Bowl window closed? It is this year. And they got here's the thing. It's closed with this group for sure. Because after this offseason, there's going to be so many changes. I'm telling you, this offseason is going to be wild. And one of those changes might be Kyle Shanahan. So I do not believe the 49ers can win a Super Bowl this year. I don't think it's going to happen. And so with the changes that are pending and upcoming, I think it is close with this group. Now, if Jed York wants to buy in and give Kyle Shanahan 8 more freaking years, maybe he can rebuild the roster and go to a Super Bowl and lose in the future. But right now with this group, yeah, I think it's close.
I think it's close too. I think they know it. I think they know it as a team. I think they haven't recovered from losing the Super Bowl. I think they have lost a lot of confidence in themselves and their head coach. And I think Kyle knows it too. How about that? I think Kyle knows it too. I think he's losing belief in his quarterback, which is why instead of having something inspirational to say after this loss, he basically said, we got our ass kicked, and then walked straight to the locker room to ream his quarterback in front of the media and his teammates. I think Kyle knows where this season's going. I don't think he has any answers, and I think he's in self-preservation mode, which is another way of throwing your quarterback under the bus. That's where I feel they're at.
You know what I think he's hoping for? He's hoping that CMC will come and save him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I can just get through this bye week and we get CMC back, I can run my entire offense through him and be good again. That I feel like he's hoping and praying for that to happen. And one thing that I don't think anyone's talked about yesterday was, I bet you, I don't know this, but I'm willing to bet you that his whole offensive game plan was going through Deebo Samuel yesterday. And once Deebo couldn't play, it all fell apart for Kyle Shanahan. Because
once again,
once again, he schemes everything up for a certain player. This is the Deebo game. This is the CMC game. And if those guys can't show up or get injured and they're out, it's a complete collapse. And I bet you that's what happened yesterday.
I would agree with that. See, I mean, I don't know. But I can't imagine that having Deebo would have made much of a difference. Like, that's why I feel like the Super Bowl window is closed. What's Deebo going to do? What was Deebo going to do? Oh, was he going to beat man-to-man coverage?
No. That's not what he was going to do.
No, Aiyuk wasn't going to do that either. I mean, it's so incredible that this team is so expensive. They have so many weapons. And you take, like, McCaffrey discouraged most teams from playing man-to-man coverage because they couldn't cover a man-to-man. So the Niners got to feast on zone. And you have all these zone merchants, Kittle, Aiyuk, Deebo. As soon as McCaffrey's not there, teams start playing man. All the $30 million a year, man, the $24 million a year, like, you can't win? Well, then what are you getting paid for? To get schemed open on play action against base defense zone coverage? Cool. That's not worth $30 million a year. So I don't know. It just seems like they have a lot of overpaid players. Like, is Nick Bosa worth what he's getting? I mean, he gives you a sack, maybe a game, but his run defense is not anything helpful, anything special.
Nick Bosa is a very good player, not worth being the highest paid player in the NFL. There's better players in the NFL defensively than Nick Bosa. I mean, here's the thing, that one of the other errors with Kyle Shanahan that he's made, and there's several. It's not just like his play calling. That's the problem with Kyle Shanahan. A lot of it is befriending players, paying players when you should be getting rid of them. Right? Bill Walsh talked about getting rid of players a year too soon versus a year too late. Well, Kyle's signing guys years too late. Like the what you paid for Debo, you haven't got your money back. Debo's almost 20. What is he? 29, 28 years old. He plays like a running
29.
back. His career has been playing like a running back. If you look statistically, when running backs hit 28, they fall off. So that's what we're seeing from Debo Samuel. Trent Williams was on the ground a lot yesterday. He's past his prime, right? He's still a very good player in comparison to a lot of people, but he's not the same Trent Williams. George Kittle looks still very good, which is great. But Brandon Aiyuk, as much as I wanted them to sign Brandon Aiyuk, but I want them to sign him early so they can save a little money. But now that's looking like even I was wrong about that, and they probably should have just traded him. I'm concerned about signing any of these dudes, period. Like, they all seem like they're past their prime, and I feel like that's part of the reason why this Super Bowl window is closed.
Okay, I got a sort of a follow-up in the same vein. We agree the Super Bowl window is closed. It looks like the Niners are starting to come to that realization. Are they fracturing as a team, or like, are they even a team? I have some examples. First of all, there was the Trent Williams ejection. You're a captain. You're the oldest player on the team. You've been playing football your whole life. Of course, if someone hits you in real life, you could do what you want to do. That's between you and the law, and you could hit the guy back. But in football, that's going to be a 15-yard penalty and ejection. And you did it anyway because you were more concerned about your ego than the team. And then after the game, this was less publicized, but Ricky Pearsall gives his post-game press conference. It's 8.5 minutes, and he's talking about, the moments when he thought he might die or he might not play football again. And he was really opening up and being very vulnerable, talking about tough stuff. Nick Bosa's there waiting because he's the next guy to talk. They brought him in. He's sitting there looking at his phone the whole time during the press conference. Then he gets up, and Matt Mayoko asks the first question. After listening to what Ricky said, like, what can you say about that guy? Like, out of respect, let's not just get to the game. Let's talk about Ricky because he's a little bit bigger than everything right now. And Bosa goes, honestly, I wasn't paying attention. He's a good guy, though. Good kid. Is this a team?
All right. Well,
it's a collection of talent. You tell me.
Let's go with let's start with the Trent one. If someone hits me, I'm going to hit them back. But in a game that you're winning or close to winning or it's close, you don't do that. I think the reason why Trent didn't give a shit at that point, excuse my language, was because they were losing already, right? So He's like, whatever, man. I don't care. You're not going to be hitting me. I'm losing anyways. And we've seen that from Trent Williams in the past. When they're losing, he did it against the Eagles. When they're losing, he doesn't care anymore. It's like, whatever. We'll see if there's consequences moving forward into the following games. So, I mean, like, if someone hits me, I'm going to hit them back. I understand that. But in the game where it's close, I definitely would have. And maybe Trent wouldn't have if the game was close. But, the game was over. And
still it was still a 2-score game. The Niners went down, scored a touchdown. Could have tried to get a 2-point conversion. I mean, it was they probably had a 2% chance of coming back, but don't get ejected. You're a freaking captain. It would have been nice to have him on the field for the 2-point conversion attempt.
Yeah. As far as the Nick Bosa, Ricky Pearsall thing, I mean, maybe he really wasn't paying attention. And I know he's in a bad mood. Right?
Oh, I believe he wasn't paying attention for sure.
Yeah. So he probably wasn't paying attention. So maybe that's all that was. But I think there's more to it, than what you're saying. Are they fracturing the team? Are they a team? I think they've all been about themselves individually this year. I think they're burnt out. The message of their coach, the veterans, the guys have been here a long time, and they've gone the distance year after year and continued to fail and fall and collapse against teams like the Chiefs, where you're 0-5 against. That wears and tears on you. You lose your belief, and you start to become more central focused on yourself. And that's why I said before the season, it's the quest for checks. It's not the quest for 6 anymore. It's the quest for checks. And that's what it felt like. Everyone's holding out, just trying to get paid. I don't think they buy in or believe too much in Kyle Shanahan at this point, and that's what's dividing the team more than anything. They probably got each other's back, but I think they lost a little belief in themselves.
All I know is Trent Williams held out all offseason and came back at the very end, and now he's getting ejected. Like, are you in or are you out, man? Are you on the team or not? You couldn't be bothered to come. And when he was asked about missing training camp, he's like, man, I'm at this stage of my career, I don't even do training camp anyway. The only reason I like training camp is because you get to meet people who won't be on the team anyway. It's kind of cool to meet people who wouldn't. It's like, are you kidding? I don't know. So you like this, it was beneath you.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he's an independent contractor. Nick Bosa couldn't even be bothered to listen to Ricky Pearsall talk about almost dying. He seems like an independent contractor. Like, who's really in on this team? Brock, Jordan Mason playing with the injured shoulder for sure. But I mean, Debo, is he in or is he out? Is Christian McCaffrey in or is he out? A lot of people are saying, oh, Christian's going to come back and save this team. What if they're 3-5 and he feels there's a risk of him tearing his Achilles? What's the reward of him risking that for a team that's going nowhere?
The way Christian is strikes me as a guy who wouldn't care. He would just want to do his. I feel like Christian is that guy. He would not care. I feel like.
You don't think Christian makes business decisions? Isn't Christian the guy who didn't play in the bowl game for Stanford?
That's true. That's a good point.
I don't know about Christian. We'll see.
Yeah.
He's got guaranteed money this year and next year.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. He didn't consider the team first when he asked for guaranteed money, knowing he was injured. He didn't do that. But as far as like
himself,
giving it his all, he seems to do that in practice and in games. He doesn't want to come off the field. So I don't know. We'll see about that. But I mean,
we'll see.
You have a lot of greater points. Like the greater point is accurate. Like they are fracturing the team. And we said it before the season, or we said it throughout the season. Winning fixes a lot of shit. But when you start losing the way they are losing, and I predicted, me and you both said that they were going to lose to the Chiefs this game. We knew that. Yeah. We just didn't know they were going to lose like this. Like they lost 28-12. That last touchdown was junk time, right? The Chiefs were just prevent defense trying to slow everything up. They really lost 28-12. They scored 3 points in the first quarter, 3 in the second quarter, 6 in the third quarter, 6 in the fourth quarter. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing the way they lost. And that's going to fracture your team when you see your coach get mollywopped the way Kyle Shanahan has by Andy Reid.
And it's worse than that too, because like in the first half, I think they had 3 3-and-outs, and like they had 56 yards of total offense in the first 28 minutes of the game. Then they went on that drive at the very end because the Chiefs were playing 2-minute defense with more of like prevent zone coverage. But when they were playing man coverage, the first 28 minutes of the game, I said 56 yards. It was that bad. So It's like, I mean, yeah, you're missing some guys, but that is a total condemnation of the coach and the quarterback.
Yeah. I agree, man. It raises a lot of questions for Brock as well. Like, do you want to pay Brock Purdy $60 million? I think the answer right now is no.
No.
I think you pay him like $30 million, $35 million, and I think that's fair. Anything over that, you got to question what you're doing.
I'm not so eager to extend him. I'll let him play out his contract, and if he has a problem with that, I don't care.
I would do it with hire Ben Johnson, let Brock play out his contract, and give him a year. Say, hey, you didn't play good this year, man. We want to see you with Ben Johnson, see what you can do, give you another year to earn it.
We just gave out this contract to Aiyuk too soon. We regret it. We're taking a new approach now. All right. Yeah. We're going to do some sleeper picks. I'm giving away 2 tickets to the upcoming Cowboys game. Haven't picked a winner yet. I'm picking him by the end of the day, or her. So if you want to get in on this, download the app, use promo code Cohn, COHN, get entered to win. All right. Let's make some picks for tonight's game. Oh, no, let's do Dallas. Let's do Dallas and the Niners. Jordan Mason, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. This is early in the week. We got 4 guys. Let's do it. Brock Purdy. Passing yards. That's all we got for Brock Purdy so far. 245.5, more or less.
I'm going to say more. They're going to ball out against the Cowboys, and the hype will return. It'll be nothing, but that's what will happen. I think more is what I'm going to go with for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, he's been hitting the more every other week. I think you're absolutely right with that. Dak Prescott, 256.5 passing yards against the Niners, 256.5. He's been kind of off and on too.
I'm going to say less, and I think we should also acknowledge the defensive back unit for the 49ers in this game. Gave up only 145 yards to Patrick Mahomes. So they do that to Patrick Mahomes. I think they're going to do it to Dak. So I'm going to say less.
Ronaldo Green is playing over Yadam, and I think he's a big upgrade. There's no corner you can pick on in the Niners secondary.
Yeah, they're good. Demo's good. Ward's good. Mustafa's good.
Jordan Mason, 70.5 rushing yards against Dallas.
It's tough. Like, is he healthy? More. Yeah, I wouldn't mind saying more. But is he healthy? I don't know. He only averaged 4.1 yards per carry last night. I don't know if he's healthy or it's just the Chiefs defense is just legit. So, but I'll go with
the Chiefs have a great run defense and the Cowboys have a pretty mid one.
Yeah, I'll go more.
So that's the only reason I would go more on Mason. And I know he's not particularly healthy, but he'll be healthier next week than he is this week. All right, those are all the picks we can make in that game. Let's do Baltimore, Tampa Bay. How about Lamar Jackson, 234.5 passing yards? He's been balling the last couple of weeks.
What did it look like rushing? What's his rushing yards opportunities?
54.5.
I'm going to say, that's tough. I would say more on rushing, but I'll let you call it.
Now we can go more on rushing. I think I did that one yesterday too. Derrick Henry.
Evans is always good for a touchdown. Oh, Henry. Yeah, he leads the league in rushing right now. What is his?
He's just hitting the over every time.
Yeah, I'm go over on that.
Evans
is always good for a tutty.
He is, but they won't let me. I don't know why. They've blocked the combination. Oh, because I did Baker Mayfield. I didn't do that. There we go. Okay. Evans. Yes. Want that. One more. Justin Tucker. Bucky Irving.
Bucky. No, I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about Bucky. So
he's over on rushing yards every single week. They have Rashad White, who's a good running back, but he's more of a receiver.
There you go. I mean, look at the numbers. Go over on that.
There you go, Bucky. There we go. Those are our picks.
Boom.
Done. Remember, I'm giving away 2 tickets to the Cowboys game on Sunday, naming a winner tonight, and also giving away a hold on. Wait a second. A signed Ricky Pearsall jersey. Oh, where is it? Oh, it's right here.
I'm going to that game, by the way, brother.
Huh?
Nice. I'm going to that Cowboys game, by the way.
You are?
Yep.
You need some tickets? I'm giving 2 away.
Give it to me. No, I got them. I paid $1,200 for them, unfortunately. So
I paid a G for these.
Yeah.
Okay. Brandon Aiyuk. Torn ACL most likely, out for the year most likely. I mean, he could miss the first part of next year too. Like Talanoa Hufanga tore his ACL midway through the year. There's no guarantee that Aiyuk will be back for week 1, and there's no guarantee what he'll be like when he gets back. Case in point, Talanoa Hufanga. So, how do you think this injury impacts the Niners in the present? And then we'll talk about how it impacts them in the future.
In the present, when you're on a team that struggles to get open against man coverage, and your best man coverage beater, wide receiver, and Brandon Aiyuk gets hurt, it doesn't help. Debo's not getting open against press man coverage. Juwan Jennings does well against it because of his size, not because he beats it. So it hurts when your weakness is beating man coverage and your best route runner is done. It hurts, and that's gonna have big implications for how they go this season.
All right, I got hot takes. I'm coming with the hot takes. I don't think it's going to hurt.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to hurt. I'm sorry. He was great last year, but I don't think he was playing well this year. That drop yesterday was brutal, and I think this just gives more opportunities for Juwan Jennings and Jacob Cowing. And Ricky Pearsall, too. Now, I wasn't super encouraged with Ricky Pearsall, but that wasn't really the point. He was playing a game 7 weeks after getting shot. Like, that's the point. But I didn't think he was creating that much separation, but again, I'm super open-minded. It's very early with him. Cowing was doing the stuff he was doing in preseason. And Juwan Jennings, I've been saying for a while, deserves more targets. So Cowing, I mean, that stutter move was nasty against man-to-man coverage. I think he might have the skills to beat that. So I'm curious to see if the offense becomes a little bit better in the short term.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing like that, in my opinion. Cowing, we've all been begging for the 49ers to play Cowing against more. And he did exactly what he did in the preseason. He did it last night. So that's good. I'm glad to see that. And he might be able to, get open more than some of these guys. Pearsall, I don't want to judge him. It's too soon, really, right?
Too soon.
We'll see. We'll see.
Mhm.
Juwan Jennings has the most contested catches in the NFL, and that's because he really doesn't beat press man coverage. He just makes a play on the ball when Brock throws it up and he goes and gets it. So that's effective, but he's not beating press man coverage. Debo's not beating press man coverage. So I think it's a bad thing. And I also think if you go back and watch the film when the All 22 comes out, all the teams that the 49ers have been playing have been bracketing Brandon Aiyuk and focusing on Brandon Aiyuk. There's no CMC no more. So now Brandon Ayuk's the guy they're dialed in on. And I think that's why some of his numbers have been down. With him out, who are they going to be worried about? Kittle, maybe?
I mean, whether or not Juwan Jennings is creating separation against man-to-man coverage, like he's winning. He's winning. So that's an asset. Like Ayuk wasn't. Debo isn't. Kittle depends on the matchup. I think Cowan can, but he's not going to get many targets. And then we'll have to see about Ricky Pearsall. So it's possible that their offense doesn't exactly, again, like what was Ayuk doing this year? 3 catches a game. It's not like he was making an impact yet. I don't think the offense will be that much worse. Maybe it will be. But in the future, $30 million a year on a guy who may not start the season next year, may not be what he was before, like that could really hurt the Niners going forward, that contract.
Yeah, and who knows if Brandon Ayuk's going to be the same player that he was. I mean, I do think people aren't realizing, like when CMC's gone, the focus now is on Brandon Aiyuk. Teams are dialing in on Brandon Aiyuk. And I think, that has the gravity effect. And then you take him out of it, that goes away. So now you don't have CMC drawing gravity. You don't have Brandon Aiyuk drawing gravity. Now the defenses can dial in on everybody. And I think that is going to hurt this team. As far as the future, who knows if Brandon Ayuk's the same dude? He may not come back the same if it's an ACL, MCL. We don't know. Maybe he does. But I think how it really impacts the future, Grant, is these guys, maybe it's a good thing, learn to not pay. And maybe I need to learn that too, because I was calling for them to pay Brandon Aiyuk. I think the right move would have been to trade BA. Really, now that I look back on it, maybe that's the lesson they learn, and that's how it impacts the future.
Here's the thing. I mean, the Niners are free to do what they want to do. I just don't feel like they have a championship formula, and I think they need to be questioning the way they do business sometimes. Like, would the Chiefs have given Brandon Aiyuk that contract?
No.
They
didn't.
And to me, like they're not a perfect organization, but they're the best. And if they would clearly not do something, I'd seriously consider not doing it either.
Yeah, I mean, look at these contracts. The CMC is a bad one, and the Brandon Aiyuk one looks bad. Now, I do think, again, I think teams are dialing in on BA, and I think Brandon Aiyuk would have worked his way back.
Sure,
but his drops are just ridiculous. Like I was defending him, but dude, like you make too much money to drop this many passes. It's not even like last year he had 2 all season. He's had 2 in a game this year. Yeah. It's
the thing with the Chiefs that's so interesting to me is like they decided that Tyreek Hill wasn't worth $30 million a year. And Tyreek Hill is worth $30 million a year. He's way better than Brandon Aiyuk, but they wouldn't give it to him, and they were right.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't even want a wide receiver who's worth $30 million a year, even if he's worth it, because we want to have a great defense and we want to have a great offensive line. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid will figure it out. Like, we'll get a bunch of tight ends. We'll get a bunch of running backs who no one wants. Like, we will freaking figure it out. But what we're not going to do is spend hella money for wide receivers. Not going to do it.
That's something I was wrong about, man. I always admit to you guys when I'm wrong. I think I was wrong. Like, I wanted them to get them early for like 26, 25, something like that. Maybe that wasn't possible, but at 30, they should have just traded him. That's how I feel now. I think it was a mistake, and I was wrong about it, and I think the 49ers were too.
We'll see what happens, but yeah, I think the Niners, and I wonder, because it was so interesting, the Niners process of signing him. It seemed like a lot of people in the organization didn't want to, and I wonder if they were a little like at war with themselves, and if there was a faction that capitulated, and how they feel now, and if that faction contained, I don't know, owners, Parag. I wonder who was in the organization that's like, this is a bad idea. for these reasons. We have spreadsheets. We have Microsoft Excel. We've run the numbers. Not a good idea. Kyle's like, no, it's my team. I'm doing this.
Yeah, it's Kyle's decision. So it's another thing that makes Kyle look bad. And then can we talk about one other thing in regards to Kyle Shanahan that's frustrating?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he has this offensive line philosophy where he thinks it's not important, and you just need certain type of offensive linemen that can, block in the run game and outside zone. That's proven false as well, and that's never going to change. And I think that's a major problem also. It's just been bugging me, so I wanted to talk about that too.
Okay. Let's get through some super chats. I got one topic left. This guy says Brock Purdy hasn't been the same since the Ravens beat down. 23 turnovers since then. That's not accurate. 23 turnovers since the start of 2023. Misreads. He had Mason in the flat. No one near Mason. Then Kyle is 1-10 against certain DCs. Who knows? Who knows? I'm sorry. Who says for Ben Johnson, Jacksonville more appealing than the Niner job unless we trade Kyle there first? There's something awful about that organization, though.
Nobody wants to do it for Jacksonville. What?
They're cheap. They're a cheap organization. Billy G says, how's Debo so sick but is still standing the whole game? I don't know. I guess we'll find out about that one. I just don't know. Jim Graham says, imagine BP with Ben Johnson as his coach might actually be elite. I'd like to see that.
Better.
He's done such a good job with Goff.
Yeah, he'll be better. Elite.
Like Goff doesn't miss anymore. He hits like 85% of his throws now. Like, what?
Yeah. Goff's one guy I've been saying that, man. People think I was tripping for years now. He's been hella consistent for the last 4 years, maybe throughout his career. He's hella consistent.
People write him off because he can't move. It's like, yeah, neither could Brady, neither could Peyton Manning. Like they made it work. And I'm not saying Goff is those guys, but he was the number one pick in the draft, and he's been to a Super Bowl, and he's still in his 20s. Am I wrong? Maybe he's not.
He's not old, dude.
He's not an old dude. Steven Draper says no alpha on this coaching staff. Big problem.
No Staley with the cat cows on the sidelines. He's the alpha.
The Nick Sorensen, Kyle Shanahan haircut is not an alpha haircut. Not that I have one. I'm just saying it's like it's a surfer haircut. Joseph for real says Ben Johnson and Salah. Rob has an eye for defense. To make any portion of the Jets legit is major and proves the ability. Oh, that would be a dream come true.
Yeah, I would like it. I'm down. Robert Saleh, defensive coordinator. As a head coach, maybe not as much, but as a defensive coordinator, great. I'm down.
Yep. Ben Johnson is a head coach. I'm into that. Herbie Holland. Mason ran for 4.1 yards per carry. Chiefs gave up 3.7. Even with that, you get third and short. Run the football, Kyle. My Lord, run the ball no matter what. And maybe go for it on 4th and 1 sometimes.
Yeah.
You coward. Herbie Holland says, look, it's time for a reset. Even the great Bill Walsh really got pushed out, so Kyle Shanahan needs to go. Purdy is not the franchise. Just reset the whole thing. New coach, new quarterback, start over. Yeah, I'm sure that's what the Yorks want to do.
Why does Seifert and Wilsh not get as long as or Walsh and Seifert didn't even have as long as the leash as Kyle Shanahan? Someone explain.
And they won multiple Super Bowls. People keep being like, well, it took Andy Reid 21 years before he won his Super Bowl. Oh, so every coach should get a 21-year leash before we determine they can't do it?
Ridiculous.
Dustin the Gale says some of the turnovers were anticipation throws. For those turnovers specifically, it seems like Brock was just doing exactly what he was asked of him, agree or disagree. I mean, that's not what he would disagree.
He's a quarterback. He's a quarterback. I don't care what, like, that's the thing. If you want to be an elite quarterback, regardless of what the coach tells you pre-snap, when the ball's hiked, you're the quarterback. It's your decision. The ball's in your hand. Make it happen.
John Muniz says Kyle won't play Cowing because he's so stubborn and wants to show everyone that Bell can get the job done, even though he can't. I hope I'm wrong.
You know what I think Cowing was? The Cowing thing was, I said it. I think that he was waiting for Ricky to play before he gave Cowing an opportunity. Yeah.
I can see that. Gizmo Maltese says, why isn't Debo used as a great third down back? Yeah, they're going to have to figure out a way to get something out of Debo this year. Jules 06 says, Brock has no pass protection. Get him some help.
You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip when it comes to Debo, and I think Debo's a turnip at this point.
Charlie Sinclair says, honestly, honesty is refreshing. You guys are the best. Kyle is overrated. Watching Kyle apologist show this morning is not it. People making excuses for Kyle today. It's a bad day to do that. Carabel Tedeschi says the way they couldn't convert first downs when they were second and short on multiple occasions was wild. Damien says, why is Kyle harder on Brock compared to Jimmy G? I think he was pretty hard on Jimmy G too. Okay. So it's documented now that the Niners struggle against man-to-man coverage. Great against zone, not so great against man. Why do you think that is? It's a complex answer.
There's a lot of, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of answers to that. Again, Debo's not a route runner. One, Juwan Jennings beats man by making a play and going up and get the ball, but he's like high 4.7 guy. He's not a burner. I like Juwan Jennings a lot and what he brings to the table, but he's not a route you up, beat you. That's not who Juwan Jennings is either. And then Brandon Aiyuk has been bracketed. He's also not the same player he has been. So there's a little bit on the receivers there. I also think it takes time to get open against man when you don't have the offensive line for that. But I really think it's a scheme thing. I really think more than anything, Kyle Shanahan has a system in place that he's not going to go off of. I mean, there's tons of coaches and players, former players, who have criticized Kyle Shanahan's passing scheme on known passing downs for a long time now. And I think fans are starting to see it because they're not getting in front of the 8 ball in the games, and they're put in those situations more frequently. But I know you have probably a better answer on this.
Well, I just thought, Kyle owns a section of it. And I think it was great to see Kyle struggle to scheme open guys against man-to-man coverage while Andy Reid didn't struggle in the same game. And you could see how Andy Reid does it. He will have a bunch formation. He'll have a little rub route or a little crossing route, or he will throw a screen pass. He was throwing screens to tight ends. Like, where are the screens in your offense, Kyle? It seems like you could throw a million screens to Jordan Mason, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Debo. Like, a lot of these guys would be a lot better on a screen than running a route. So many ways you can do that. And for whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan isn't. So a lot of it's him. But like you said, a lot of it is the fact that they paid all these wide receivers all this money, and I'm not sure what they paid them for, because if you can't get yourself open, what are you really getting paid to do? What are you really getting paid to do?
And I think we shouldn't leave out Brock Purdy in this equation.
I agree.
Yeah,
he's the third one.
Against zone defense, you just have to know where the hole is and hit it with anticipation. Against man, you have to fit it in the tight windows. You have to throw a little harder on the line. You got to be able to read the defense better. So there's a lot of it falls on to Brock Purdy too.
I agree. So it's kind of everything.
Yeah.
That sucks, because that means that they're going to keep seeing it and they're going to keep struggling against it.
Yeah. I mean, the 49ers should expect, like, some teams are going to try to do what the Chiefs have done and the Vikings have done, and they're not going to be able to pull it off. Seahawks, for an example, they tried to do it. They just don't have the personnel to do it. The Cowboys might be watching this and try to do it. I don't know if they have the personnel to do it either, but then they're going to come against teams again who do, especially if they make the playoffs, and they're going to struggle. And that's why I think they're going to beat the Cowboys. I expect them to, and the hype's going to come all the way back up. And then they're going to play another team that knows how to scheme against Kyle and has the personnel to do it, and they're going to fall off again. And that's why I don't really have belief in this team this year.
I mean, at least Kyle Shanahan and the organization understood how big of an issue this was, which is why they drafted a wide receiver in round 1. At the time, I was like, man, this is not a need, because they had so many wide receivers. But it's like they had wide receivers who were overpaid and couldn't fulfill the need they needed. But they couldn't beat the coverages they're about to see. And maybe Ricky Pearsall can do it. I think Jacob Cowan can do it, but Jacob Cowan's 5'7". You can't use him as a number 1 receiver. You could throw him a couple shot plays a game, give him a couple end arounds and jet sweeps, and I think he'd be nice, but he's a complimentary piece.
Here's the thing, and I've tried to be respectful of Pearsall because he's been through a whole lot, and we haven't seen him yet. So I think I need to give him time on the field to show us. But the scouting report on Ricky Pearsall coming out of college was he can't beat press man coverage, and Herm Edwards, his former coach, said he's going to struggle with that in the NFL. Now maybe Ricky will prove me and Herm Edwards wrong and all the college scouts wrong. But if that's why you drafted him, it doesn't really make sense for you to go to one wide receiver that's known for struggling in that situation.
Yeah. So other than that, it really feels like the Niners got Christian McCaffrey and we never have to face man-to-man coverage ever again. What if McCaffrey gets hurt though? What if he gets bilateral Achilles tendonitis? You're going to see a lot of it.
That's the. I mean, honestly, I think Kyle's banking on Christian McCaffrey return, and that's probably their only hope at this point.
Well, we'll see if that happens. This guy, JFig909ers, says Kyle's scheme doesn't work anymore. Simple as that. I think we can go out in that one. This has been an incredible show. It's an incredible week for the 49ers. I've been covering this team a long time and Kyle a long time, and it feels like he's at the crossroads right now. He loses to the Cowboys. God knows what happens to this team at the bye week. So dramatic times.
Can we lift the people up with a little Crossroads by Bone Thugs and Harmony? Because I feel like that's in you. Or no?
Meet you at the crossroads so you won't be lonely. So you won't be lonely.
Lift the people up. There you go.
Isn't there a remix version with Phil Collins on it?
They did a song with Phil Collins. Was it a remix?
Is that not Crossroads? What is the song with Phil Collins? Bone Thugs.
They did a song with
Collins. Take Me Home. Oh, so good. Why is Phil Collins so dorky and so cool at the same time?
He's underrated. Yeah.
So underrated. People who know.
Yeah, they know.
His music slaps, even if he's corny.
Yes.
Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Kyle Shanahan, I wish you all the best, man. Big week for you. Can only go up from here. Someone's got a case of the Mondays. All right, see you guys.